Good Friday morning, friends. Welcome back for another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don,
My name is Jonathan.
and today we have special guests with us. This is Kate Monahan. She is my district superintendent. And I'm going to let Kate introduce herself a little bit. Kate?
Hey everybody. I'm so glad to be on this with you all today. Podcasts are among my favorite things to listen to, and ones that are not boring are even better.
Oh,
And
well, then you don't
so,
listen to ours.
no, I do. Well, I only just learned that it existed, so I'm super excited to be on. I'm Kate Monahan, as you said, the district superintendent for Delaware Bay, and I just started in this role less than a year ago, July 1st. So I'm the new kid on the block. So it's good
Does,
to be
does
here.
that mean I can invite you to come do my ministerium services? And
Yeah, well, you can invite me to do anything that you want. Hopefully, I
well,
can say
well, we'll
yes to at
talk.
least one.
We'll talk. I'm going to be away in August.
Okay.
Anyway, the film we're talking about this week, if you haven't caught it yet from Jonathan's background, is the 2020 Disney Pixar film Soul. Um, Jamie Foxx, I think, is the primary voice actor
Yeah.
here.
Mm.
And
And Tina Fey, I think, is 22.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so, Kate, since this was your film, we a lot of times we just assume folks have seen the film. And so particularly if it's more than if it's not something that's in theaters right now, we don't worry about spoilers. We're going to assume you've seen it. Like a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Citizen Kane. No,
Okay.
yeah, we're going to talk about spoilers because the film's
Yes.
81
Yeah.
years old. So
Yeah. Yep.
something
Yep.
like that, 85 years old.
It reminds
So,
me of the time that someone spoiled Harry Potter for me as an
Mm.
adult while I was in the middle of Harry Potter for the first time, but it had been out for like 20 years, and there was no remorse from that person.
Yes. At
yeah,
some
well,
point, you just got to take the hit. Yep.
if it's been out for a while, yeah, you're taking your chances. But Kate, where would you like to start talking about this film?
Oh man. So I first saw this movie on an airplane. I was bored and looking for something to do, and so I decided that I was just gonna try this one out. And by the end of this movie, I am embarrassed to say that I was basically weeping on the plane. I was so moved by this movie, and one of the things, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a guy named Joe who believes that his purpose in life is to be a jazz musician. He has this dream to play kind of in the big leagues with some of the biggest jazz artists. And he works and works and works and works and works. You find him at the beginning of the movie. He's a teacher. He's teaching jazz because he didn't quite get his break yet. And then at the beginning of the movie, he like basically is about to get his break, and then he dies, and his soul goes into the afterlife, or he ends up being in the before life instead as like a mix up. And the whole movie is about his journey of trying to get back to his body and figuring out what really matters in life. And he meets a friend along the way that kind of helps him inadvertently get there. And so I was so captivated by this movie in part because at the time I was really doing a lot of studying around purpose and how we help churches and pastors kind of redefine their sense of purpose in the aftermath of COVID. Because if you remember, after COVID, in the world, not just in the church, but in the world, there was like this huge migration away from what people were currently doing in their lives and their employment and moving to like different jobs
Yeah.
post COVID. So like nearly 50% of the workforce over like the 2 or 3 years after COVID switched jobs. And I was also seeing in the church just a ton of exhaustion among our pastors, our congregants, just in trying to navigate, this disorienting season of life. And I watched this movie and I was weeping on the plane because I just felt like it spoke so deeply in some way to what happens when you're disoriented in life, which happens to all of us. Like it doesn't take a worldwide pandemic to come to a point in your life where, you know, you feel like it's gone off track, or you feel like you um, need a change, or you're not sure if the thing you're doing is the thing that you should be doing anymore, or maybe like Joe, you feel like you never got your break and you've been yearning for this thing that you think is going to give you a
Mhm.
sense of your purpose and you know, give you a sense of satisfaction in life. And then maybe you get there and you realize it isn't what you thought it was going to be. So I think we all go through that. And
It's a
I,
huge thread in this film is the whole
yeah.
idea of purpose, right?
Yeah,
Um,
purpose and calling and vocation, I think. Like,
yeah,
what is it really?
Yeah.
yeah. I did find one interesting aspect, and I identify with that whole purpose thing. I kind of harken back to, and as clergy, we've all been through this process where we had to do all the psych testing and all of that stuff. You had to sit with a counselor and they go over your psych exams with you and they tell you, well, when I did that, they told me, your exams indicate that you're probably not the best suited person for the ministry.
Mm.
And I went,
Okay.
oh, really? I said, well,
You're
what
off
does
just
that
a little
mean?
bit.
Yeah. I said, well,
And
I've
did
been
you
doing
say,
it for,
well, thank God the Lord, there's a clear history of the Lord choosing people who aren't suited for ministry?
I don't know, I've been doing it for more than 20 years now, so I think I've got
Yeah.
a hang of it. But um, I said to him, what does that mean? He says, well, it just means that you will have to find some less traditional ways to be satisfied with your experience in serving a
Hmm.
church.
Hmm.
Okay. So, so
So what
that's
has
what
that
I've
looked
done.
like for you?
For me, it looks
Yeah.
like this podcast.
Yeah.
It looks like, some of the things that I do and Kate, you've heard me say this, like from the first day we met, in kind of pushing my church out, my congregations out of the building, and out into the community and getting involved. And those things are bearing fruit. So, but it was interesting in that, I was almost told this isn't your purpose, and yet here I am.
Yeah.
No. Um, John, I
Yeah,
thought you had something you want to say.
no, no, no. I'm listening. But I was thinking a lot when I was watching this. I'm preparing for a sermon series after Easter. I've decided to regularly throughout the year do a deep dive sermon series on different spiritual practices for my congregation. And so after Easter, because in part I'm going to go on a sabbatical as well, I thought I'd do Sabbath. And I've been reading Heschel's classic, The Sabbath. He's a Jewish writer, active in civil rights movement. Um, and he makes this beautiful point. I've just started the book, but he makes this beautiful point that in Judaism, um, space is not made holy, time is.
Mm,
And I really got out of this movie. At the end of the movie, again, you can't blame us for spoilers. It's 6 years old movie. Um, but at the end of the movie, it's kind of revealed that the purpose of life for everyone is to actually embrace life,
yeah.
to enjoy it, to be in the moment and be present in it. And Don knows this because we've talked about this on this podcast. That mindfulness and Buddhism has been a big part of my spiritual journey, even before I kind of came back to the Christian faith. But that idea of being present in the moment, that idea of, you know, engaging with life now. And this movie kind of ends with the fact that what we're all called to do is actually engage in our lives, whatever that means. So, in the bad moments, in the good moments, in the triumphant moments, to engage with life and be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And I just love that idea of Heschel's where we're supposed to make time holy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
And
like
Now, I
yeah,
wonder,
it's yeah.
I wonder, Jonathan,
I
though,
love
did
that.
you did you see, in that, um, sort of a double-edged sword, though?
yeah,
And what I mean is that, particularly as clergy, particularly as Christians, okay, we function in a sense of calling,
yeah,
right? And there's this kind of almost vanilla, well, your purpose is just to enjoy life. No, my purpose is to do what God has called me to do.
No, I
You
don't. I yeah, I know I said enjoy, and that's not the right word. I
know?
would
No,
use.
but I
Yeah,
mean, I saw the same thing. I'm
yeah,
not arguing with you about that.
yeah,
I
I've
kind of
yeah.
saw the same thing, but to me, it felt
I
like,
think, yeah, I think again, this is a kids movie, and well, I should say it's an animated film directed at kids, but Pixar always
primarily, yeah.
has that element of I'm going to give the parents something to do while they're watching this movie, right?
Mhm.
But I do think, and so they're not going to go into the depths of this, right? But in the Christian tradition, one of the essences of what we do, right, is this idea of we connect even our suffering with Christ. And so through that, we make our suffering have meaning and have purpose and transform our lives and the lives around us. And so, yeah, the movie doesn't go into Joe dealing with his mother's death. Like granted, she doesn't die, but I'm just saying, like it doesn't take this kind of weird turn where it talks about suffering.
Mhm.
But what does it mean to face suffering and not hide from it? What does it mean to try to find a purpose even in those moments of suffering? And that is kind of the task of the disciple of Christ, right? Is to find meaning and purpose and something that matters even in the hard stuff.
And I think so this question about um you know I think that our purpose is often located, and somebody famous says this, I can't remember who at the moment, but where your deepest joy or your deepest longing meets the world's need.
I
And
think it's yeah,
it's like this fine balance between like your purpose and our calling, I think, is this fine balance between the things that light you up the most
yeah,
and suffering, right? And sometimes the things that light us up the most, they're informed by both the things that bring us a lot of joy and also the places where we've suffered the most.
yeah.
And so I think that for me, what's interesting about this, and I think what's interesting about our call as clergy is that sometimes those things get a little out of balance. Like I think we're taught that our calling is just you're gonna suffer for your calling. Like we have a whole history of martyrdom and things like that, and you're gonna suffer for your calling. And I do think that there's a degree to which, in our Christian faith, we're informed by things like suffering and sacrifice and all of that. But I think that there can come a time in every person's life where you can become so consumed with that dimension of things that you almost forget your spark, like, and referencing back to the movie, or the things that really light you up. And I would contend that when your calling feels more like suffering over the long term and less like a spark, that something is missing.
Yeah, that's
And so
burnout.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think that recovering your spark, being able to find it, being able to truly live out of it is really essential to our life of faith. I
Yeah.
think we have to.
I think here Henry Nouwen said you're
Yeah,
going.
I think that might be. I think that's right. I was just reading this quote a couple weeks ago too. I can't quite remember, but it's a really well-known quote. But
Yeah.
to kind of go back to what we were saying earlier too, I also really love the idea of what Jonathan was saying is um the purpose of our lives is to really live it.
Mhm.
And I think that's in all of our joy and in our suffering, right? Because if you think back on the movie, when he's kind of having this out of body experience, he's in the cat and he's watching 22 in his body interact with his mother.
Yeah.
There is a dimension of suffering in that. There's this fraughtness to their relationship. There's this memory of his dad having died. There's this conversation that they're having back and forth between them about, unfulfilled dreams and just this deep longing to fulfill these dreams. And that's such a moving scene, I feel like, and it's wrapped up um in joy and suffering, and sort of the reconciliation with his mom, and also the recognition that his life has not gone according to his own plan,
Yeah.
and the loss of his dad, and all of that. And so there's this sense of presence that I think
Yeah.
we can cultivate in our lives, to your point, Jonathan, about spiritual disciplines, that I think that can connect us deeply to what it means to live in our everyday. And
Well,
like, go ahead. I was
no,
just
no,
gonna say,
no.
I love how they have all of they show 22 living life for the first time in his body,
Yeah.
through the lens of these very ordinary things like pizza and the wind and the feeling of music. Like, he's so obsessed with music, but it's like all up in here
Yeah.
for the most part, and like achieving this thing. But 22, she's like drawn in his body to like the feeling that
Yeah.
music gives him. And she says, maybe walking could be my purpose, or
Yeah.
sky watching could be my purpose. And he's like, that's just regular old living.
Yeah.
But for her, it's something that's like sacred and profound. And what's super interesting is that they call it jazzing
Yeah.
in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, isn't that also the purpose of jazz? It's like the feeling. Like,
Yeah. Right.
I'm not a jazz artist, but when you listen to
Yeah.
them talk, it's like the whole way they do jazz is through feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I just
It's
thought it was so interesting.
I think it's the idea that the journey might be the point and not
Yeah.
just the destination. And
That
how do you live
I
that?
can get on board with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I can get on board with.
Yeah.
You said something else, and now I'd slipped my mind. But what else? And
Well, I thought it was really interesting that you kind of see in the character of Joe, kind of in the movie when you reflect on it at after you reflect on kind of the reveal at the end. Because I don't know if you had this experience, but the first time I watched it, I assumed he was going to learn his purpose was teaching.
Mm,
right.
That his purpose was to give this gift of love of music to other people. And what I think is interesting, I guess, is that in the movie, when you reflect back after kind of the reveal, you see him not enjoying those moments, right? Like when he's teaching, he's thinking about playing jazz, and when he's playing jazz, he's thinking about teaching, and not enjoying teaching when he's teaching, and not enjoying playing jazz when he's playing jazz. And
yeah.
it's kind of this idea of what if you actually enjoyed the moment you were in? What if you actually embraced the moment you were in? And that's something that I think our culture really does us a disservice about, because we're always trying to live somewhere else, whether it's the past or the future. We're always trying to figure out our past, or we're always trying to plan next year's vacation, not, what's this beautiful thing that's happening around me, and how can I love what I'm doing right now?
And it's also very achievement driven. Like, the thing that you are doing, it only really has value if it looks famous, or if it reaches a ton of people, or if a bunch of other people think it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Like we need other people to validate that through our achievement culture, I feel like.
Yeah.
Do we not do that even in clergy circles? We measure
Oh,
ourselves against our colleagues and the
100%.
size of their
yes.
churches,
Right.
right?
100%.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Uh,
it can't be more like, you see in the movie how damaging it is to his relationships, like the actual relationships. Like Jonathan said, he's checked out when he's teaching. He's checked out when he's, playing music with his colleagues, because he's always thinking that there's
well,
something else that's going to satisfy more.
just
Yeah.
the experience when 22 is in his body and he goes to get a haircut. And he gets all this
Yes. Oh,
information from
yes.
the barber, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and he said, "How come I never,
Yeah.
you never asked?" You know?
Well,
Yes, that
and
was
they had
such a
that.
good
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also you have that same moment with I can't remember Dorothea, the leader of the jazz band, when
Mhm.
at the end of the night he's like, "What's next?" And she goes, "We come back tomorrow and do this." Like, and he's like, and you realize he was expecting this mountaintop experience that was going to radically change his life, and he
Yeah.
had this mountaintop experience, but it didn't radically change his life.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
It was and man, that barber scene, I'll be honest, that's a super convicting one for me. Like I watched that scene and I'm like, how many stories have I missed out on because I was so focused on what was going on in here
yeah,
that I didn't stop to ask. Like, man, for me, that was such a powerful scene. And it makes me want to be ever more mindful. And you can tell, like when he's in the cat and looking at this, he's watching this. I felt like the cat in that moment. I was like, oh God, how many people have I done that to?
yeah.
That
Well,
was such a good scene.
Kate, I want to just, I don't know that you necessarily need this, but I want to just say you're doing well at that because we had a point, well, this is, between Kate and I, we had a point when, things were going really challengingly because I chair a committee on our district that I didn't expect was going to be quite as busy as it has been. And I served two churches, and it was been very stressful. And right after we had a district thing, and we were talking at that district thing, like the next day, Kate called me and said, "What can I do to take some stuff off your plate?" Which I can't tell you how much I appreciated that. Just even if you couldn't have done it, which we did do, but even if you couldn't have, just the fact that you heard me,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm so glad I didn't miss that moment. But I'm sure there are others.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are others. But I think that's something we all have we can all grow in. I think that we all miss moments sometimes
yeah.
because we're just wrapped up in all the things. We live in a very busy culture. We all have a lot on our plates. I mean, I can't think of a single pastor, person that works in the church, parishioner that I know that don't have 9,000 things on their plate that they're worried about at any given time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the middle of that, how difficult is it to do what Joe realizes to just live, instead of like focusing on the next task? What's the next thing? What do I have to get accomplished?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that also fascinates me about this story, it as somebody who really gravitates towards the arts in general, um, I have done a lot of studying in recent years about how art and engaging in creativity and things like play, even as adults, actually makes us better human beings. And I think that there is an awful lot of nods to that in this movie as well. When he starts playing for the sake of playing, as opposed to playing for the sake of producing, achieving, fame, it becomes so much more fulfilling for him. And I feel like when we can engage in the things that feel most playful and most life-giving for us just for the sake of themselves, I actually think that that's where we begin to really live.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
that's the whole idea of the zone, right? This idea
Yes.
in the movie where, you know, if you enter the zone, you get to go to this spiritual place, right? It's a very mystical movie, which is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
interesting because I feel like most Christians aren't aware of the mystical tradition in the Christian faith. And, I think as we get more and more into the postmodern reality, it's harder for us to embrace this idea of the zone or this idea of kind of a transcendent plane. But that idea is an ancient idea you'll find in every religion of this idea of being able to transcend the here and now because you actually just embrace what you're doing so deeply that it kind of changes you. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that whole idea of like it could be spinning a sign board, or it could be playing music, or it could, that idea of can you lose yourself in what you're doing? And how do we do that more? How do we kind of step back from our routines and actually breathe and live in the moment? And
Yeah,
that's something that's
psychologists call
powerful.
that a flow state. Like
Yeah,
this is actually a psychological thing
yeah,
that people study.
yeah,
Now, have we not all experienced that in the pulpit at some point?
sure.
I
Yeah,
wonder, I wonder if every pastor has. I definitely do feel like
yeah,
there have been times where I have gotten into the pulpit and I have just started preaching, sometimes not even the words that are on the page, or
yeah,
somehow the words that are on the page that felt like they had no meaning at the time, all of a sudden have a whole bunch of meaning while I'm saying it.
yeah,
Like there have been times where I've written a sermon and I've been like, I hate this thing. But
yeah,
then I get into it and I'm like, what happened from the time I printed this from the printer to the time I stepped into this
yeah,
pulpit? And
yeah,
all of a sudden it came alive in this moment, and other people said that it meant something to them. Like,
yeah,
I do think that that does happen.
You
yeah,
have, I don't know if you've seen that meme of the guy where, like the first panel says, I preached what I thought was my best sermon ever and everybody hated it. And I preached what I thought was my worst sermon ever and everybody loved it. And I don't know
Hmm.
what I'm doing.
yeah.
No
We
idea what
and
I'm doing.
and we have language for that in the faith, right? But we often, I think, misuse it because we'll say like the spirit. It was the spirit moving me, and I think what's sad about that is sometimes we talk about it like the spirit took over and we weren't part of that, but that's
Yeah.
not really what it means. It means that we allow the spirit to kind of to help us embrace it more fully, right? We were
Yeah.
still part of the journey and we were still part of it. It was just we allowed the spirit to work with us and make that moment transcend, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if this, and I'm gonna, Kate, I'm sorry if you haven't seen this other film, but I wonder if this doesn't influence somehow that very now infamous scene from Sinners.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen
Oh
that
yeah.
yet.
You
That's
haven't
a
seen
really
Sinners yet? You need
look,
to
I
go see.
know.
as much as the Academy loved One
Yeah.
Battle After Another, Sinners was the best movie of 2025,
You know,
Yeah.
without
DS
question.
Rennell said she went and saw that movie 7 times in theaters.
Wow.
In
I'm not
theaters.
Yeah.
And
surprised.
then she bought it.
We
Yeah.
we saw it in theaters when it was still out, and it's well worth it. I think it's
So
on
so we're
HBO
not going to
Max
give it
or
away because
Prime
it's
right
a
now.
powerful scene. But when we reviewed it for this podcast, I talked to Don about the idea that that scene that's about music, but
Uh-huh.
to me that scene really communicates what communion's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I won't give it
Mhm.
away, but when you see it, you'll understand kind of think where I'm going, where it just seems like time compresses on itself. And to me, that's part of the beauty of what we believe happens when we come to the table. So,
Yeah, that's in out. Well, that's our next movie night. That's what we're doing because
yeah,
I've
It
heard it
is
so
a
many
great
times
look.
now.
yeah.
Um, it ain't for kids.
No, it's not.
But it is a great film.
Yeah.
And I disagree with the Academy. I think it should have been Best Picture last year, but you know. Um, so we're getting towards the end. Anything else we want to say about this film? And I know we never have enough time to dig into everything.
Yeah.
So, but anything
Well,
else, particularly Kate, you want to bring up?
on the Zone one, like it was
Mhm.
interesting that the Zone and the place where souls go when they're lost
Yeah.
are like connected to each other.
Yeah, I
It
like
was
that too.
that was very interesting. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but um the place where lost souls go in the movie is the place is when someone is so consumed by their own anxiety or their ego or their obsession that it disconnects them from their purpose and from the people around them and from their experiences basically.
Yeah.
So I kind of the idea is that like when you're so anxious or when you're lost in your ego like Joe was or when you're so obsessed about this particular thing like it makes it harder for you to find your sense of purpose and connection with others. And I felt like that was a really good way to talk in some ways about even sinfulness, like sinfulness as being disconnection, disconnection from yourself, from God, from your relationships to one another.
Yeah,
That's a definition of sin, generally speaking, that I can get on board with.
yeah.
Um, and so that kind of felt significant to me. Um, and the idea that, like, that the zone, what do you guys think about the zone and the Lost Souls place being so close to one another?
I'll
Really
be
are an overlap, not even just
yeah,
close to one another. They were an overlap.
I actually really like that idea because I think it's powerful to reflect on the fact that even when we get disconnected, we're not far from where we really want to be. Like
Oh,
there's that kind of umbilical cord of grace that still
oh,
is
that's
there,
so good.
you know.
This is
And
why I
so I
keep him
really like
around.
that idea that they were kind of like, yeah, I love the idea that even when we're broken, we're not disconnected from love or grace. We just think we are.
There's also a sense
Oh,
there that those who were the lost souls in that place
Yeah,
were sort of self-absorbed. They were
yeah,
surrounded by this kind of cloud of their own, their own doubts and their own fears and that sort of thing.
yeah,
So they're perhaps in the zone and just, so self-absorbed that they cannot experience it. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
oh my goodness. I feel myself getting choked up by you saying that. You've made this movie even more awesome for me,
Perhaps.
Jonathan. It's
I'm glad. Next time,
What
next
we're
time
here
I
for.
come up in cabinet, be nice.
That's so good. That's really good. And
Uh,
I do think that that's right and that is very powerful. And I also think that like sometimes, you know, there is this fine line sometimes maybe between doing the thing that you love to do or the thing that lights you up or even the thing that you're gifted in and doing it in such a way that it really just becomes all about you
yeah,
as opposed to what God wants to do through you in the world. And I
absolutely.
think that's some of what Joe's caught up in. I think that I think that also connects for me.
Yeah,
I also wonder, 22 was so funny. She was so funny in that movie that she had all of these mentors, like these heavenly realm mentors that were trying to help her discover her purpose, people who were like really famous and good at different things, trying to help her discover what things she was good at, and she just exhausted all of them. And she became so discouraged because she couldn't figure out what her purpose was. And I wonder how many people are going to listen to this and find themselves in that place too sometimes. That, like, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I love.
yeah,
What does that mean for me?
yeah,
And what I tell people, because look, as clergy, you get that, right? What I have often told people is listen to the people around you, because a
Mm,
lot of times it's not going to come from here. It's going to come from outside. It's going to be people who see something in you, and you're able to then embrace what they see in you, that you do well, or that you light up when you do. There's coming back kind of full circle. When so
yeah,
yeah, and
we
I
have to.
also,
We're getting close to
yeah,
oh,
running
yeah,
out of
I
time.
know
So,
you could talk about it forever. Let me just say
yeah,
we
one more thing.
sure.
The comment that they make to 22 in the beginning, that he makes to 22 in the beginning when they're in their disembodied states, and he says, "Why do you sound like a 30-something-year-old dissatisfied white woman?" And I have to say that that was so funny because I do think that the question of like, what is my purpose? What am I here for? Like, what is the thing that lights me up? I don't know. Like, it's a question that adults ask a lot. And I think,
yeah,
in addition to your comment about one of the things that you can do is listen to the people around you,
yeah,
one of the things that I would say, in addition to that, is go back in time to the places in your life at an early age where you experienced love and fun and excitement. What were those things? Because
Yeah.
for me, that was art and drawing when I was a kid. And for a long time, I didn't do any of that because I kind of picked up the message that it wasn't really worthwhile. And it was in rediscovering that a lot of things changed for me, include things that don't even feel related to art necessarily changed for me when I rediscovered that. So going back in time to thinking about the places as a kid where you naturally gravitated toward, that helps too.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, it's that powerful study that I can't remember exactly who did it, but that idea that in kindergarten, over 90% of people define themselves as creative, and by sixth grade, it's down to 30%.
Yeah.
So it's like we do it to ourselves and we do it to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before. Well, friends, we are down to a mere couple of minutes left on recording
Okay.
time. So, um, Kate, I want to thank you so much for coming out and sharing with us, picking this
Absolutely.
film. This has been a very enjoyable conversation.
Yeah.
Um, Friends, for next week, we have already picked the film. You heard us talk about it last week. It Is This Thing On?
Is this thing on you?
Yeah, which is on Disney and Hulu.
Yeah.
And until next Friday, friends, which this will come out, we're recording on Holy Thursday. This will be out on Good Friday. So next Friday, the Friday after Easter. Until then, keep on finding God in the dark. We'll see you all next week. Take care and God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast, friends. If you've made it here all the way to the end of the video, then obviously you find something that we're doing to be educational or informative, something valuable in this podcast. So we want to invite you to go ahead and share this with your friends, hit the like button, follow us for more of this. We publish every week at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings on YouTube. Shortly thereafter, you'll find us somewhere on Facebook. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Thanks for watching. Bye now.